Greetings, YouTube. Today's video is going to be involving anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. So if these things aren't stuff you want to listen to, or you might be disturbed by them, this is not going to be your video. I completely understand. Thanks for stopping by. I've been in therapy, I think, for about 3 years now, and it's done wonders for me. My life is so much better since I found not only cognitive behavior therapy, which is something I had been aware of long before then, but the right therapist for me. His name's Steven. And Steven and I have been doing a lot of work. Steven likes working with me because I work. As I've mentioned here on my channel, I have a 3x5 stack of cards I keep in my back pocket all the time. And most of the time they're used for things I need to work in therapy. Or work on, whatever. You get the point. And I walk into that therapy session every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, depending on how it breaks down. And it's almost always full. And I had been working and playing with things in my head and watching other people and trying to figure out the dynamic between me and them and other people and everybody with the world around them and my past and how they've related to their past. And I listen to videos and I read books, and I never stop working on this. Steven's told me that in a 2-week time period between sessions, I do a month's worth of work because I try, because I want this to work. And it is work. It is a job. It's not fun a lot of the time. But the end result is wonderful. Because he has patients that don't work. That they show up in a moment of crisis, have the crisis resolved, and then don't come back until the next moment of crisis. Or don't do any work except in the session, and then it's like pulling teeth. You can't fix the engine in a car when you're going at 60 miles an hour down the road. And when you're spinning out of control, that's not the time to tune the engine. You need to do it when you're not in crisis. So you need to work on the tough things that you don't want to think about when you're not in a state of anxiety and depression. And it isn't fun, but rewarding. Okay, so recently I read a book a few months ago. I read a book about Iraqi and Afghanistan veterans, specifically in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and their incredibly high crime rates, including murder, rape, suicide, things like this, assaults, robberies. I haven't posted that review yet. I will at some point. And it got me thinking about PTSD and how an abysmal job that we are doing with our veterans. We suck at this. We are not helping these people, and we need to. They've done their job. It's our turn to do ours. And then 2 weeks ago, on the 5th I think it was, I encountered something, that a chart, and it showed the percentages of individual groups that suffer from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And veterans have a 30% rate of suffering from PTSD. So 30% of all veterans suffer from this rather unpleasant disorder. Really unpleasant disorder. This disorder that can kill them and hurt other people and make their lives miserable. But there are 3 groups that had higher rates. And I found this interesting because when you say PTSD, you think veteran, which for good reason. I mean, 30% of them suffer from it. So there's a good reason you think PTSD equals veterans. Adult survivors of rape have a 36% chance of suffering from PTSD. Men and women. Women that have survived domestic abuse have a 45% rate. And I apologize, I don't have statistics on men that have survived domestic abuse, either at the hands of other men or of women partners. So I apologize, I just don't have that statistic. And the group that's higher than any of them is children that have survived abuse in the home. Not sexual abuse, just abuse. They didn't specify anything categories from sexual abuse. That's probably even higher, which is depressing. But the kids that have survived domestic abuse are at a 50% chance of suffering from PTSD. So this got me thinking. I'm thinking to myself, well, was there ever a time in my life from my earliest memories until I entered therapy, when I may have suffered from PTSD. I mean, that's a legitimate question. I'm not trying to hop on the bandwagon. I'm not saying I have it as tough as a veteran, but I would think that, is there a diagnostic definition that I would have fit at one time in my past? And it was a legitimate question to ask my therapist, I thought. So I did. And as I finished that question, rather, have I ever suffered from PTSD? And before, the D was out of my mouth, he was pulling a piece of paper out of my folder that was sitting in his lap. The folder, it sits in his lap every session. And he turns it around, he raises up and holds it in front of me. And he says, "That's what I've been treating you for." And it says PTSD right at the top of my chart. And I never knew it. I'd always been couching it in terms of anxiety and depression, which are part of PTSD. But PTSD is a larger, overarching disorder than just anxiety and depression. And when he showed this to me, I laughed. And I said, well, better late than never. Then I made a bad pun and said, it's good to know we're on the same page. Because I'm like that. And so it was refreshing and depressing and enlightening all at the same time. On another note, the session in general was very positive. Some sessions are a mix, sometimes the sessions are really bummers. I leave the session. We try to always leave it a positive note. Sometimes it's really tough. But that session I had the other day was, or I should say my last session, by the time you see this video. My last session was very positive overall. I had made a number of revelations and a number of understandings about my own development and the fact that I am in a healthier position. And for example, I have got to the point where I have internal validation so I can validate myself, and I don't necessarily need to seek external validation. I mean, I don't mind external validation. I'm human. But I don't need it. There was a time in my life, and that was the only kind of validation I had because I didn't have the ability to have internal validation. And now I do. Like I said, it's really kind of nice having these improvements. And I'm not trying to say that I'm on the same level as a veteran or a survivor of adult rape. I was a survivor of child sexual abuse and domestic abuse, and I witnessed domestic abuse. That doesn't, I'm not comparing myself. You can't compare pain. Each of our experiences are unique and individual. And what I've gone through is like nothing that anyone else has gone through. Just like today is experienced in 7 billion different ways. And I have been around veterans who have suffered PTSD right in front of my eyes. And I've helped talk at least one of them out of it. And I've been around people who have had episodes that were triggered because they suffer PTSD. Sometimes I could help, sometimes I couldn't. But even in my most confused, my deepest, most complex and traumatically fraught moments of anxiety and depression, I still tried to help. Sometimes I didn't do it in a healthy way for my own well-being and the other person's well-being. My heart was in the right place. I wish that my methods had been better. Now I have a much better understanding of how it works. I can accept that person's experience for what it is, just as I can accept my experience for what it is and was in the past. And I've been rambling on for almost 10 minutes now. So, in closing, I have PTSD. And it's interesting. And I'm glad that that finally came out, and I think I understand why Stephen didn't tell me. He wanted me to get there on my own. And I think he had confidence I'd do it. And I know he would have let me know if I didn't. But he gave me the space to stumble around, and make mistakes, and be wrong. a real pity my parents didn't do that. But here we are. The past is a book. I can learn from it. I cannot change it. And I'm better off today than I've ever been. I'm happier, calmer. My depression is pretty much almost completely eliminated. My anxiety is under control and diminishing on a regular basis. I have a better understanding of the people around me. I have greater capacity for empathy, sympathy, and compassion. And by gosh and by golly, you can't really ask for more than that now, can you?